Hello, all of you. We'll take up a discussion on one of the topics asked in the previous year's questions. It was on arid cycle of erosion. Now, the Daviesian model that we know of is typically applicable for the humid, temperate regions of North America. The Davis model is essentially a model which is trying to generalize that the conditions of North America are supposed to be representative of the entire world. So his original model, which he called as the normal model, is essentially a model for humid regions. And in humid regions, the rivers are the most important agents of erosion. And all other types of climate he had called as climatic accidents. But what happened was, in the later modifications, he did acknowledge the role of other agents also. And in the later ones, he did talk about the arid regions. He also talked about glacial, and eventually Davis model also got applied to marine cycles, and they also got applied to karst cycles. So in the question asked, you are supposed to discuss the arid cycle of erosion. Now, what does the arid region mean? Essentially, this is a desert. This is an area of water stress, more evaporation compared to precipitation. Now, what Davis did what? He typically applied these conditions to the desert parts of North America. And in North America, the desert regions have a lot of faults. There are block mountains. If you remember some bit of the map of North America, so if this is the North American continent, these are the mountains of the Rockies system. And this area is the relatively drier regions. This is the desert regions. It's essentially an intermontane basin. Intermontane implies between the mountains. So we have the ranges of the Pacific Coast Mountains, the main Rockies, and in between the main Rockies is referring to an area which is like a basin. And this area is a desert. Now this area in US typically also has conditions of faulting. It's typically what's called as ridge-basin topography. So there are faults of this kind, and there are hosts, block mountains. So it's a kind of a ridge basin, and this is also a dry region. So what Davis did was, when he was applying the arid cycle, he was applying for this part of US where he is trying to superimpose the fluvial cycle in the deserts. So even if he talks about deserts, he is still referring to riverine processes. So that's an important understanding. It's not that in the deserts he is referring to the processes related to aeoline process. He is not referring to the wind erosion or wind depositions. He is still considering the river is the main agency of erosion. So what he says is that the process of erosion in the deserts again goes through some kind of a sequential development. So if you remember the concept of cycle of Davis, Davis cycle has some features. The changes are time-based, the changes are sequential, and the end product, there is some kind of flattening, and the end product is an erosional plane. So this idea of cycle, he now applies to the arid cycle also. So what he says is, there is an initial stage followed by the youth stage, the mature stage, and the senile stage. The initial stage is a stage when the landforms uplift, and this upliftment may be because of faulting. Remember, he's talking about the conditions of North America, and in the intermontane basins of US, in the Rockies region, there is faulting. So it refers to as faulting. And after this series of consequent drainages develop. Consequent drainage implying some rivers which are flowing the initial natural slope of the land. So if this is type of a mountain, there is some kind of faulting and there is development of a basin of this kind. And in this basin, there is a river which is moving down the slope and there is some depression in between. It's like an intermontane depression and the river comes and drains here. And in the initial stage, there is a central lake called as a playa lake. There is some mountain upliftment, there are cracks probably, a basin develops, the river flows down the slope, and there is some kind of a basin in between, a playa lake where the river drains. So this playa lake is an area of internal drainage. It is not a river that is draining into the sea. So this is the initial stage. Then it talks about the youthful stage. In the youthful stage, the process accentuates, the river comes down the slope, there is some depositions by the river, and further down there is again this lake. This deposition is something like the alluvial cones, and as they properly develop, these develop into depositional plains called as Bahada, Bajada. You pronounce it as Bahada, but you spell it as Bajada. So a mountain, there is consequent drainage, there is deposition in the Bahada, and the river again drains into a playa lake. In the mature stage, the mountain starts eroding and becomes much more thinner. There is an erosional surface that starts developing. The river is moving down, and then we have the Bahada, the depositional plains, and beyond this is the playa lake. Essentially, if you compare the youthful stage with the mature stage, in the youthful stage, directly from the base of the mountain, there is this depositional Bahada. But now what happens is, as the mountain is getting eroded, there is a surface which gets exposed here, and this is an erosional feature. And beyond the erosional feature, we have the depositional Bahada. This is the depositional Bahada. And before this is the erosional surface called as the pediment. And all this while, we also have the river draining into the playa lake. And in the mature stage, it's also possible that the river, some of the rivers, they now start breaching the divide and cutting across. So there's a typical landscape here where we have a depositional Bahada, but before that an erosional pediment, and some of the rivers can also cut across. They can cut across because of maybe headward erosion. And here also similarly there is a pediment. Beyond the pediment is the depositional Bahada, and beyond this is again the playa lake. And as the process continues, the pediment becomes even more developed, and the mountain is reduced to small hills, an extensive pediment, there is a depositional Bahada, and a proper playa lake. So something of this kind, an extensive pediment, there is a Bahada, and there is again a playa lake. So this is something like the cycle of erosion of Davis. Now you can look at the pages of the books for revision, and that's for reference. Savindra Singh, page number 474. So this model, the factual aspects, this model was given by Davis in 1905, and is applicable in the case of mountainous deserts. And in this case, we are still talking about the role of water apart from wind, but the water is an important agent. And he talks in the context of North America, where the deserts have experienced folding, faulting, development of intermontane basins. There is initiation of inland and centripetal drainage. And there is some kind of local base level, which is the Playa Lake, which is formed. Once the initial stage is done, so if you look at this diagram here, some kind of elevations are here, the elevations are here, there is this development of a Playa Lake here, and we have some rivers moving down the slopes. And in time, this intermontane depression is now widening with the formation of some kind of the depositional. We have got Bahada formations here, and the Playa Lake in between. Then as the process progresses, the youthful stage, now we have, it says we have the deposition going hand in hand along the erosion, and the water divides are getting narrow. Then it says that there is a zone of degradation, which is erosion. There's a zone of aggradation, which is the depositional Bahada along with the Playa Lake. And in this case, the relief remarkably gets reduced. The mature phase, the relief is reducing rapidly. The relief reduces rapidly, progressive recession of the water. The Bahadas are enriched. The mountain divides may be breached. So if this is a mountain, it now gets breached. Some river can cut across. The river can cut across. So we have the pediments, we have the Bahada plains, and we have some kind of a Playa Lake. The mountain divide gets breached, and the process starts developing into some kind of a bare surface of desert pavements. And then in the old stage, it is reduced to almost a plain, numerous residual hills, and these may be Inselbergs or Bonhards, extensive peδιplains called as desert peneplains or pediments. So what we want you to notice is a couple of things here. It's important to note that this model of Davis, given in 1905, continues to talk about a river as an agent. In this model, there is reference to depositions also. Otherwise, in the normal cycle, there is no reference to deposition or any floodplains. In this model, he is referring to a local base level, which is essentially the shores of the Playa Lake. And the landscape starts from the youth, it progressively reduces, and what we get is a flat surface in the senile stage, which L.C. King called as the Pediplanation, and Davis continues to call this as a type of a peneplain. I have summarized this discussion into one chart. This may help all of you. I'll share this on your portal also. So this is a summary of the entire discussion with the diagram. The concept given by W.M. Davis, 1905, initial stage, intermontane basin, folding and faulting, Playa Lake, there is consequent drainage, and there is filling of a basin. The youthful stage, zone of degradation, aggradation, alluvial fans. The alluvial fan is eventually becoming something like a Bahada, and the relief is being reduced. Mature phase, relief reduces, continues, Bahada gets enriched, pediments are formed, and desert pavements are formed. Senile stage is almost reduced to the plains. This becomes peneplain type. The peneplain, this term pediplain was used by L.C. King. Otherwise, this is also referred to as pan-fan by A.W. Lawson. So see if you can revise all of this and convert into an answer form. Thank you.